And here we are once again, folks. It is the Spoiler Room. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight as we start our a new month. It's the last month of 2025 season, if you can call these seasons. I never do anything properly, so but technically this was our 12th season here, and we're wrapping it up because I don't take breaks between episodes, so I don't know how to put these as seasons, but in any case, the last month of the year is Captive Audience Month, where we're looking at films where one person is taking a group of people hostage, not just one person, but a group of people, a business, a bank, whatnot. And tonight we've got an interesting one that, upon rewatching it, it's still actually kind of relevant today in many respects. And we are looking at 2002's John Q, starring Denzel Washington, Robert Duvall, Ray Liotta, a number of folks are in this film. So thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite drink with us as we talk movie spoilers. And with me tonight is the right hand man. He just keeps coming back, and we are so happy he does. It's none other than Ian Simmons. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to talking about this. This is a first time watch for me. So yeah.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, cool, because I'm definitely curious about your take on it because I've watched this a few times. I'm a big Denzel Washington fan. So that's part of the reason why I've watched it is just because I like Denzel Washington, and there's a lot of people in this film, surprisingly, that I forgot about on the rewatch. But for those of you who may not be familiar with what John Q is about, let's head back to 2002. Doodle, doodle, doodle. HMOs, insurance, and that are in the news, and so they did a movie about a man named John Quincy Archibald, played by Denzel Washington, whose son has a major heart condition in which he basically needs a heart transplant. The son collapsed during a baseball game, and they discovered that, yeah, his heart is very enlarged and he needs a transplant or he will die soon. But old John Q Archibald has only been moved to part time because they've reduced the labor because a lot of the jobs have left and layoffs going on. His wife just got a job as a waitress, so he's got insurance. But lo and behold, his company just recently changed providers, and they recently, since they cut his hours because the work isn't there, moved his tier. So his insurance is not covering his son's transplant. And so the hospital says, thank you very much. You can't afford this. Take your son home, go buy a coffin. And he is not accepting of that. So feeling his back against the wall, he brings a gun into an emergency room, ropes it off, and takes some people hostage to try to force the hand of the hospital to move his son onto the donor list of donors for a heart transplant. And yeah, we see how the chaos ensues and the conversations begin to spark amongst the people who are outside rallying for the cause, going, yeah, insurance rates are pretty high and it is a pretty scummy thing. And there's debates on both sides. There's a heart surgeon that's trapped in the emergency room with them, and he gives some perspective. There's a variety of different characters that we get to meet. And yeah, we watch how John Q Archibald, or just John Q, tries to figure out what he's going to do in a man who's just trying to save his son. I think that sums it up pretty good.
Very well. Yeah.
So, Ian, this being the first watch for you, what'd you think about it?
It's tough because I want to see, like so many movies, I want to see a version of this movie that has a balanced perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, they do get some differing points of view throughout the movie, but there's no question as to what Nick Cassavetes, who played the villain in The Wraith, by the way.
Yes, he
Um,
did. Yes, he did.
Nick Cassavetes, who directed it, and then James Kearns, who wrote it. I have no question as to where they come down politically and on the issue of healthcare, and that's fine. But this movie is more heavy-handed than a Michael Moore documentary. I mean, just about the half-hour point when John Q starts taking hostages, the dialogue goes from, all right, yeah, it's a struggling family just trying to make ends meet, to everything is a damn speech. And I'm like, I would happily watch a documentary about 2002 era healthcare, but I thought I was watching a drama. And it just bothered me because it's also around the same time that you realize you're just getting all the archetypes piled in. You've got, the pregnant couple, you've got the lady who doesn't speak English. You've got the guy who's with his girlfriend. Turns out he's not only a racist, but he also beats his girlfriend. You've got Eddie Griffin, who's just being Eddie Griffin.
I love that. I love when I forgot he was in here. I'm like, oh, hey, look, Eddie Griffin.
Right. But he's not a character. It's literally just, I didn't look at what his name was, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was just Eddie Griffin happened to be in Chicago that day and got stuck in an emergency room during a hostage crisis. Yeah, it's weird because Robert Duvall basically shows up just reprising his role from Falling Down 10 years earlier.
Yes. Yeah. That's what's funny is watching it again this time. I'm like, holy shit. This literally could be the same guy. This literally could be the same guy from Falling Down.
That would be great if this took place in like the Falling Down cinematic universe.
Oh, and then you could do that if they could have cast Denzel Washington in the minor role with the sign out saying, they said I'm not viable for a loan out in front of the bank.
Yes.
Oh my God. And then we've linked the two universes.
Wow. But yeah, and Ray Liotta shows up and he's the preening head of the police or whatever, and Anne Heche is like the hospital corpo who's trying to balance the budget or whatever, or just like make the business run.
Right.
The thing is, like, what really solidified it for me is at the end of the movie, and I know we'll get to what happens throughout the rest of the film, but there's a montage of people talking about the healthcare system. You've got Jay Leno, Hillary Clinton, Bill Maher, Gloria Allred, like all of these people talking about how terrible the healthcare system is. And they're just completely like emotional arguments and one-liners. I'm like, I understand it's a complicated thing that you can't necessarily fit into a soundbite, but is there anybody to say, yeah, it's screwed up, but here's the way why it is the way that it is, and here's something that we could possibly do about it, instead of healthcare sucks and it's criminal and people are dying. But that's kind of the vibe of the entire movie. And we get a little bit of that coming from characters who are painted out to be villains or people who gradually will come to quote unquote see the light. But it's like, yeah, their arguments are fundamentally correct. And John Q, for his, if it wasn't played by Denzel Washington, but was played by someone like Ray Liotta in a different universe, the guy, I'm not saying he's an idiot, but you never get the feeling that he's thought more than 2 steps ahead of whatever his current position is on anything.
Yeah, but I mean, at least he even comes to admit it. He feels desperate and he's in a desperate situation. And I am with you, though. I think part of the thing that appeals to me with this film is Denzel Washington. I mean, this is him really, showing them chops we know Denzel has, and showing it here, and why he's one of those actors where if it's like, oh, Denzel's in this, I'm going to watch it because he's starring in it. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to watch it because, it's just one of those things where he didn't have, not all of his films hit by this time. He did have, what was it? He had John Q. Before this was Training Day. So he's just coming off of his Training Day performance, which could be why he, one, got this role, and two, this film may have been released. I'm not sure when this was made versus Training Day.
Well, this came out in 02.
Right. And then
so
Training Day was 01.
So they probably were along the same kind of production
Similar, yeah,
schedule.
right.
2000 and then 2001 as far as
Right.
yeah.
Because it actually, back in the day when it took 2.5 years to make a movie versus 18 months. But you know, it's one of those things where so he's kind of at his height. He's in that zone after training, you know, and that shows up here, and he makes this role probably a lot better than the way it was written.
Right, and that's sort of the problem is he tends to be good / great in everything he's in, but he does a lot of heavy lifting for a lot of mediocre movies.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching this, I'm thinking, all right, I know it's John Q. Archibald, and it's not Denzel Washington, but I'm thinking Denzel Washington isn't going to bring a gun into a hospital. Like, what are you doing?
Well, no, to be fair, the gun wasn't loaded, so
doesn't matter. He knows what the implication is. What he's going to bring it in and not show it to anyone. The point is to make people believe the gun is loaded, which is just about as bad as having a loaded gun in that situation. And on top of that, the end where he's like, spoiler alert, he's like, all right, you take my heart, put it in my son. My son's got a 3 times enlarged chest cavity, so it'll probably fit. I don't know how it'll fit, but I just think it will. And then miraculously it does, because that's how movie science works. But he's like, before the miracle happens, his plan, such as it is to literally hold a gun to his own temple to force the doctor to perform the operation on him. That's amazing if he's planning to not be under while the heart transplant is going on. What?
No, I'm totally with you. This end game for that John Q comes up it is weak sauce for sure. It's the part where I was like, okay, this is, you know, I mean, again, I enjoy this movie. I'm not saying it's a great movie by any means. I mostly watch it for the people in it.
Yeah.
You know, I would have liked more interaction between Robert Duvall and Denzel Washington, because when those two are talking, I'm like, here you go. You've got two really good actors, you know, and their dialogue and there's, you know, the back and forth. I'm like, that's give me that. Give him negotiating with Robert Duvall's character, like for a good chunk of the film, you know. But they don't. And yeah, what's funny is that I saw somewhere where they interviewed Cassavetes, and he said that this film wasn't intended to be according to him, a true, like, making any kind of actual solid statement at all on on the healthcare system, that it was about faith and hope and having a belief in miracles, is what he said. And I'm just like, I saw that, I'm like, yeah, that goes like to that conversation that you and I were having about the director of Birdemic and Tommy Wiseau as well, who said, no, I intended those to be ironic and comedic. So that part too, when I saw that, I'm like, no, I mean, I get it. Maybe that's what your intention was, but did you pay attention to the script? Because you are very on the nose with a lot of things here. And while they are hot topics that deserve to be discussed for sure and addressed, it is very on the nose here. About as on the nose as Fern Gully about the pollution of your woods. So
you be nice to James Cameron. Oh wait, no.
Wrong.
I was
Fern
actually,
Gully.
yeah, I know. I was actually having this conversation over dinner a couple hours ago, because someone brought up One Battle After Another, and they hadn't seen it, but they'd been to a kind of a critics event where people are talking about their year-end favorite movies, and One Battle After Another, no surprise, came up as like near the top of that list. And someone was musing like, oh, one of the great things about Paul Thomas Anderson's movie is how it doesn't necessarily take a stand, and it's not necessarily a left or a right movie. I'm like, no one believes that who's watched the movie. You can't walk away from that film thinking, I wonder if he's progressive, liberal. He could be a conservative. Who knows? Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's the same thing with John Q, but just a larger point. Like a lot of times when you see directors making those kinds of things, I think it's very imbalanced. That's the first clue that they are in an airtight bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. Airtight, or, whichever. That wasn't their intent. And, while I will say, yes, it is very strongly one-sided. They do bring up some hot topics that have been in conversation for the last 20 years about cost of healthcare, how hospitals look at things, the questionable practices of some
Mhm.
institutes. I mean, it's not that the arguments in John Q are warranted, but I do get your point of, it would have been nice to see. I mean, they try to explain it a bit. They have Anne Heche's person try to explain it, but she does a very poor job of it. So, uh, it's one of those things where they had a consultant for the heart surgery part. I don't think they had a consultant on how the hospitals run, because but the insurance part, that there is some monologue between a registered RN emergency nurse about doctors and getting kickbacks for certain things, and that, and again, not the best written dialogue, but the subject is something that has been shown that does actually occur amongst some. So I mean, some of the points they come up in here are valid, but I will fully admit that they are very ham-fisted about it. They are very, yeah, the dialogue is definitely more statements than natural conversation.
Yeah, and it's I do give the movie a lot of credit because they do offer some of those not necessarily opposing points of view, but just explanations. Like here's one of the reasons why things are
Mhm.
the way that they are, and there's a great line in there. Like if you really hate it that much, then contact your local congressman,
Yeah,
or show up to the polls and
right.
vote the bastards out, as they say.
Mhm.
But there's some other stuff too. Like at one point, they send a sniper into the hospital through like an air duct to take out John Q, and he's foiled, and eventually he becomes a hostage. And when that sniper is released, the crowd gathered outside boos. They boo, and but again, it's like a lot of that has to do with with the media portrayal. Like, yeah, this guy was sent in to take out John Q, our new beloved Robin Hood of the healthcare system. But the point is that is a guy who was just released as a hostage. He's getting to go home to his family. He has been horribly beaten up by our Robin Hood of the HMOs. And yet people are booing him. How the hell is that supposed to make him feel? Like, wait, I won my wait, why does everybody hate me? I just got released from a hostage
But
crisis.
in the same vein, though, they didn't exactly portray those gentlemen in the best of light either. He literally had a like a smile on it. Yeah, I'll take the shot. Not they don't stay on him long, but just enough when Ray Liotta's talking to the group, like they're looking forward to shooting John.
Right.
Um,
But nobody knows that.
no, I get it. I get it. I'm saying that was for the audience, and the booing. Yeah, it's one of those things where I get what you're saying. At the same time, them booing that he was released. Yeah, I'm not sure what they were trying to go for with that. As far as his, we don't know if he has a family or whatnot. He could be a single guy who just likes shooting people. You don't know him because we don't spend enough time with him at all. He's just a plot point, like a number of these people are. And that's the thing too, is when you get into your side characters who are taken hostage by John Q. They are all tropes. They are all cliche archetypes, from the woman who is expecting to, they get a gunshot wound guy in that John Q lets the EMTs roll in, but he doesn't let the EMTs in with the gunshot wound that they bring to the hospital. Excuse me. You have you have the couple with the racist and abuser. You have a Spanish Hispanic woman with a baby that's constantly crying. So yeah, it's one of those things where these people. I think the only person that kind of felt like just a regular person, like
Don't
yeah,
say
that's
Eddie Griffin.
huh? Yeah,
No.
no. I mean, um, yeah, was that the yeah, it was getting his hand.
You think Eddie Griffin was the most normal person in that bunch? Yeah, he
Yeah,
was the guy getting his finger stitched up.
he was
Yeah.
getting his finger stitched up. Yeah, no, I mean, I liked him the best, just because I mean, he was he felt like an actual character rather than just this person for this role. He was, and he had some fun moments. I enjoy him on screen as well. Um, I it's one of those, again, watching it over again. Uh, the topics are still topical, which is kind of disturbing nowadays. And there were some things, I think, before he takes the hostages is where this film actually is a bit stronger in what it's trying to say versus when he takes the hostages, because that just opens up way too many holes and things. But up until then, they've got him and he's trying his hardest. They show him selling like pretty much everything he owns
Mm-hmm.
to try to get the money for it. He and what sparks him actually doing the kidnapping is the fact that he just made a payment to the hospital, but it apparently wasn't quite enough. So they're releasing his son so his son can be taken home. And, he's going to die if he goes home. And he's like, I just gave them money. And the doctor, they try to portray James Woods not necessarily as the bad guy. he is just they try to have him as that voice of the other side of sorts with it, as well as Anne Hetch. But then there's points where they like sympathize with John Q, and then there's points, and I don't know if it's the direction or the script or just the performance of the actors, where they come off as being dicks just to be the cold-hearted dick.
Yeah, I mean it's the whole dynamic with the cast is strange because you've got our, like we call him, the racist kind of dude who's beating up on his girlfriend. At one point he gets the crap beat out of him, and then another, like in the end of that same scene, he's dragged across the floor and kind of shoved in the corner by John Q. And yet by the end of this movie, he's sitting around with the rest of them, like laughing and cracking jokes and stuff. I'm like, what? Hold on a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
1 minute, please.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, but I'm like, what? Okay. Come around? I don't know.
I do want. I'm trying to find the name of our TV news anchor character.
The news anchor guy. Yeah, this subplot. They end up having this subplot with a news anchor guy reporting who, gives Atherton a run for his money from Die Hard. He was literally like,
yeah. Here's what's really funny about this. The character's name is Tuck Lampley, and he's played by Paul Johansson. Did you happen to recognize this actor?
He looked familiar, but I couldn't place it at the time.
Well, then you're obviously not a huge fan of the early 2000s CW teen drama One Tree Hill, Mark.
No, I happened to miss that one. I'm sorry. There were only so many shows you could watch on broadcast TV at the time.
Apology not accepted. I appreciate the attitude, but I'll just fill you in.
Hey, no judgment here, man. You enjoy what you like.
You might be familiar with the One Tree Hill meme of a guy in a hospital who he's waiting for a heart transplant, and then the EMT comes in with the heart in the cooler, the heart bounces out of the cooler, and then a
Oh.
dog eats it. That was Tuck Lampley. And there's a line where he's talking about in this, a couple of lines. He's like, and we think we've got a successful heart transplant. Yes, the heart is showing up into the hospital. I'm like, that is perfect. Because that actor 10 years later would be, a meme in waiting.
He's a meme in waiting. I like that. Yeah, he's a guy who has his tech guy be able to pipe into the feed. Don't get me started. Look, I'm a tech guy. Okay. And
I thought about you when that was happening. I'm like, I'm going to ask Mark if this is at all feasible.
It was 2002. I don't think the camera was wireless in its broadcast. They were piped in through a wired connection. That's why the booth was off to the side. They might have, but yeah, I'm able to pipe into the feed and be able to show the camera, because that's the thing that wins John Q over with the public, because up until that point, it's not sure John Q's motives really. Some people have picked up on it, but you could tell. But then they get this live feed of John Q and the audio of him talking to his wife and then his son in a very, again, Denzel Washington is way too good for this script. He sells this moment that's just like a very touching, emotional moment. He's selling it. I'm just like, damn, Denzel, you go, man. I love watching you work, because, and so the audio's there, and then you can see the sniper in the background of the camera. and then that's what makes it the bad guy. You know, and then they suddenly, that really puts the audience over, going, oh my God, he's talking to his sick son who's dying, and they're gonna sniper him. And so that, maybe that's why you have the booze later as well, because they saw the feed of that. As far as the booze go, but yeah, I thought for sure they were going to have Eddie Griffith's character be shot from that sniper, because it only grazes John Q. And it actually, and it busts through the glass where the other character's standing. I'm like, oh, I couldn't remember that part. I'm like, wait, Lester? I'm like, did they accidentally hit Lester? Because I'm like, okay, well, that would make things even more interesting and complicated, at least it bring things to, but no, they just graze John Q. And so I'm like, oh, okay. But the news trailer piping into the security feed in the hospital, yeah, they aren't broadcasting that camera feed to where he could pick up the signal. He would have had to splice into the cable to get to the feed on the camera. So that part, I was just like, no.
On top of that, I know I'm getting way down into the weeds here, but I'm pretty sure you can't do that legally for any handful number of reasons. So I'm just surprised there wasn't like a network lawyer like calling down to the van, be like, get that stuff off the air right now.
Well, that was the other thing with that part of it, which again was the part that is the head scratcher, is the fact that they were basically grabbing the audio and feed from a live hostage situation and broadcasting it on the news channel, and they didn't get stopped immediately when they would have otherwise. The feed would have been cut at the studio the minute they realized what that was going on. They would have cut the feed regardless of the ratings or whatnot, because it was an active crime situation, and they were, like you said, illegally piped into the security kit, not like they had permission to get the kit. And I know we're making it a small point, but it's one of those things where there's a lot of other things that happen when he actually initiates the hostage situation that ends up being some head scratching moments in this. Like, that's not exactly how that would work, or that's not how they would approach this, especially given the situation and the the optics of some things. They don't even that, that doesn't really come into it too much when something like this they would have. And yeah, it's really interesting how the film flips 180 degrees to where it was like this kind of solid drama thriller, building up, and then when they get into the hostage situation, it felt like the writers didn't quite know how are we going to handle it.
Right. I mean, for the first 30, 35 minutes, this is a solid drama. But then unfortunately it becomes a movie, if that makes any sense. And you
Well,
you have to sit with this movie for the next hour and a half almost. And it's like, can we just get back to the stuff that made it so great in that first stretch? Because there's a big difference just in the quality of the writing.
there is, and the dialogue and just your characters as well. And like I said, Denzel really carries a lot of this film on his shoulders. And you can tell with this cast, they intended this to be kind of the big thing because, like I said, Denzel's coming off of Training Day. So they're like, yeah, we got Denzel at Training Day. They got this cast, a pretty all-star cast for the time, 2002. These names, you look at the names they had, even for the smaller characters, they were names that were regularly in films on the title cards. So they were hoping, you could tell, to possibly make this something. And unfortunately, you're right, it does come out as a movie at a whole just kind of middle of the road, like, okay. And if you get a different lead, this film is even lesser. It is. I mean, if you ever want an example of the difference a very talented actor can make with a very kind of, thinner script, this is one of those, because, I watch it for him. I'm like, he makes you feel everything, and everybody else, you're just like, I don't care. I really don't care what happens to the rest of you. Just his kid and him, and you're just pulling for him because of him. But it's like the rest of the stuff is weaker. You're like, anybody could have played these other roles. They didn't need these names in these roles at all.
It's funny because he delivers a really a genuine kind of tears on the face conversation with his son Mikey, who's in the coma, or he's unconscious.
Yeah.
He's unconscious, not in a coma. He's waiting for his heart transplant, so he's heavily sedated to keep him comfortable. And it's this big kind of like a heartfelt goodbye moment because he's made his mind up that he's going to donate his heart to his son.
Right.
So he expects this is going to be the last thing. I did not like that scene because Denzel gave it his all, and he's a tremendous actor. But the script had let me down so far by that point that I'm like, it reminded me of how some like adult male film stars can do things on command, as they say. And I don't know why I was thinking about this watching this movie, but I was like, Denzel can do this in his sleep. Like, he can whip up the tears. He can, put on the kind of the deep emotional guttural, like, this is my final moment with you kind of thing. Cause he does it in like just about every movie he's in at some point. So I don't even know if he sweats it anymore. If he's just like, okay, you need me to cough, I can cough. You need me to cry, I can cry. I just felt like the movie was relying on that heavily because I still kept thinking, are you really going to hold a gun to your temple during open heart surgery? This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Well, yeah, and again, that's where, for me, the film falters. Is this ending part, and this is going to sound cold, but there's part of me that was like, okay, because I didn't remember the ending part of it. I'm like, okay, are they going to pull the trigger literally and figuratively to where they end up showing up just a little late with the, I'm like, there's your statement. If anything, I mean, you end up having him do the deed. Not that I want his character to, but as far as for the sake of the movie and impact and statement and just all kinds of things culminating to this point, if he actually had gone through with it only for them to show up with the heart there after right after it happens gives you more of a punch to what you're saying than, oh yeah, no, here's the heart, and oh yeah, this is successful, and oh yeah, he was able to sneak out in the scrubs to watch his son get, the surgery and the whole night. And I'm like, I mean, at least they had him at a trial at the end, and at least they had it to where he wasn't cleared of all charges. Um,
Well, all right. And this is, hold on a second. I got to pull up a note here because I want to talk about that trial. In the end, he was found not guilty of kidnapping.
no, he was found guilty of
kidnapping.
kidnapping.
He was found guilty of kidnapping.
Yeah.
But not guilty of armed criminal action.
Yes.
How is that a thing? We spend an hour of film time watching him commit armed criminal actions. And that's the thing, is like, this movie needed another hour just to do the trial because, this 3 months later nonsense where they're going through the verdict. Like, no, I want to see that evidence. This would be a very fun case to watch.
That's what you need. Is you need the trial is what you need.
Actually, that might have been interesting if the movie had been bookended or framed as of the trial and the testimony and that kind of thing.
That would have been interesting, to where it opens with the trial, rather than this rather fairly long sequence for it to get to what it needed to, which I didn't even remember that either. Like I said, I didn't remember the opening sequence to this. We'll go that in a minute, but that would have been interesting to do it as John Q's on trial and people are talking about their experiences. And you could literally cut this film back up and have that to where you could take certain scenes, just cut them out, and have the confessions, and then be like flashbacks, and the whole film would be as people give their testimony, showing the footage of the actual kidnapping events. You could even do your first little bit in the beginning up until where he was going to do the kidnapping, and then you could even do parts of that, what leads up to it through flashbacks. Just doing that and cutting up those scenes to where there's shorter amounts of, say, confessions or whatever on the stand would make this a rather intriguing crime drama. And you could still have your different statements and your different sides presented on the stand in a way. Wow, I think we just restructured this cute movie to be a better movie, as we do on the spoiler room.
You call it The Trial of John Q. You add another hour to it. Yes, I know that pushes it into the dreaded 3-hour territory. But then imagine you've got James Woods' doctor character on the stand and the prosecutor talking about the healthcare system. You could have them sparring and going back and forth and having a genuine, like, here are two sides of the argument that, people are only hearing one side of, like, how evil everything is, and the other person explaining in court mandated nuanced detail why, yes, this sucks for a lot of people, but here's the reason we can't just have all of this stuff for free and treat everybody. And maybe it's a compelling case, maybe it's not, but it'd be interesting to see.
Well, and that's the thing, is, though, I don't think they were making the case at all, or the statement that everybody should get everything for free. But they were talking about how Quagmire, and this is true because if you've ever dealt with insurance, which I have had in my own personal dealing with health issues, either for yourself or for a loved one, it can get into the weeds really quick. And some of the topics that they do bring here, the situations that they do discuss, are real things that were happening to real people. Insurance companies refusing things for many different reasons.
I'm not saying necessarily for free, but it's sort of the underlying premise, because early on, before the hostage thing goes, he's talking about, like, I keep paying you all this money, and like, yeah, but we've had your kid in this hospital for a month and we're taking very good care of him. And at one point, when the one orderly is explaining to the wife the entire battery of treatments that they have to give him, we have to inject him with this and hook it up to this, and then we got to monitor this and all that. She's like, the expression on her face is like, wow, this stuff is really complicated. And I'm like, yes, it is. And that's why it's really expensive. And
Yeah,
so
but
this,
there's also been shown that there's price gouging with some of that as well. That doesn't have to be as expensive as that.
okay,
But
sure, but
that's not been presented in the film. But as far as in real life, there are definitely evidence of things that are cost more just because of the system that we have, which is the for-profit insurance system. But that's
right, and I'm not going to get into that, but there is gouging. Well, I'm not even going to call it gouging. There are people making lots of money in every single industry, and it is going to be considered unfair by a lot of people. But if you don't have some kind of capital in order to fund the research or to back the insurance of the, if someone needs $1 million worth of care, that money's got to come from somewhere. People have to pay
right.
into the
But
system, right?
but it's been shown that that doesn't have to necessarily be $1 million care. It's $1 million care because businesses know that you need it, and so therefore they feel the need to jack up more costs than what it actually is, to where they can draw the largest profit rather than actually provide something where they can still get a profit but also make it more affordable.
Okay, but what you're talking about here isn't like it actually costs $50, but we're going to price it at 1 million. It's probably going to be more like it's $1 million we're charging you. It actually costs, let's just say, $250,000. It's still ridiculous, but it's still an amount of money that the average person isn't going to pay, but it is the amount that it costs because it's very expensive to do these things on a regular basis for the millions of people who need the coverage every year. And my problem with movies like John Q is it kind of paints everything in this broad brush, which gives people a very blanket idea of the corrupt system and with no real solutions. I mean, there's that vague thing in there about going to vote, but the end of this movie with that montage from all these celebrities and politicians about, yeah, everything sucks. It's too bad we're not in a position to do anything about it. It leads to things like the 1 year anniversary of the execution of that healthcare CEO. I mean, it's very timely. You mentioned it's timely. Yeah, we're talking about something, a year ago, 4 days ago, 3 days
Mhm.
ago, there was a guy who was whacked because he was the CEO of a healthcare company, but he's not sitting there literally writing policies and rejecting people. He's part of a large moving system that is a system of systems.
Depends on the CEO on how much they dictate on what they can find as acceptable and not acceptable, though, or what they deem as worth their time or not worth their time.
This guy is not involved in I understand broadly what you're talking about, but he is also beholden to people on his board. He is one of many decision makers, and he's also not sitting there looking at every single case that comes to this massive healthcare arm. I agree with you, Mark. The system needs to be overhauled, but when you have this blanket, uninformed, formless anger out there, it leads to things like people just lashing out, whether it's executing a guy with a wife and kids out in the middle of a busy city street, or to the fantastical, like taking hostages in a hospital. All of this stuff, I understand the heartbreak and the desperation, everything, but blatant propaganda like this isn't helpful.
No, and I'm not saying you should go out and kill someone. I do not approve of what happened a year ago to the CEO. I think there are other ways to approach it, but also at the same time, there are problems. And to say that, oh, here's a reasoning behind it, not always saying their reasoning is not always actually either good or legitimate. And I've witnessed it firsthand with dealing with my mom and her dementia and such, at the time, as well as some other folks that I've had in my family who had trouble at the time finding coverage because, and I've had some friends as well who couldn't get coverage for the simplest thing that you would think would be covered, but the insurance company just said no. And so there are many situations out there. There are just a few that I know of personally, but I know of, there's many others as well. So, I mean, there is a problem. These situations aren't necessarily being blown out of proportion. At the same time, I also get what you're saying, though, that there isn't direct there needs to be a middle ground for solutions, and neither side seem to want to meet in the middle sometimes with it. Or if you do meet in the middle, nobody's exactly happy with it, but you have something in place, but then you have individuals wanting to still pull that because they still think it's not fair for whatever reason.
Right. It's the problem is the conversations on both sides of the issue are not productive. And it's difficult because, I mean, I understand that people get caught up in this system and tragedies happen and people can't get the coverage that they need to have a good quality of life or even to save their own lives. But it's like, what are you going to do about it? Making movies like this that just serve to target, to make an enemy and to make very emotional arguments about the problem without actually offering any solutions to it. It's just, I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. Like, if you really feel that strongly about it, go do something about it. Go advocate, lobby,
Which
become
people
part.
doing.
Right, but not in the numbers that are required to actually fix anything. So until that happens, all you're going to do is have generations more of people complaining and bitching about a system that is actually unfair.
And you did have a system that at least partly was helping millions of people, that you do have a side that's trying to completely dismantle it but not have another solution to put in place with it. So
Well, I mean, now we're getting into Obamacare, which had tons of problems and caused a
ACA,
lot.
yes.
Yes, which it was its own thing and was like a lot of policies. It was a decent idea with a terrible execution that helped some people and screwed a lot of other people over. So it's not a partisan issue as far as, one side we've got all the answers and the other side has no answers. That's not the case. No one's come up with a decent alternative. It's just like every other issue in politics. It's a political football that is dragged out whenever it's convenient, and it's just designed to keep people fighting over stuff.
Right. And I understand that. And I wish it wasn't political football, because I do know of folks who are independent workers or whatnot, or do on their own, and to where the ACA has helped them have some kind of coverage versus nothing. I also know that ACA and some of the policies in place have helped people get coverage where they would have been refused because of pre-existing conditions. So I mean, not to get too much into the quagmire of that, but those are subjects that are still in today's culture that are brought up here in John Q. And you're right, it is slanted to the one side. They do present some of the things, and I'm not saying that the script was written well enough to present both sides. I'm not saying that it has at all. I am saying, though, that the situations that they do present in John Q are happening and are things that affect people in the real world. And we can't just say, oh, they're just making this up for the melodrama. These things do happen. These things are do have occurred, and they have, cases where all of this stuff has occurred, doctors getting kickbacks and such. And so, on the one hand, I understand what you're saying with it being said. On the other hand, I don't think we can just say, oh, even though this is presenting just one side and the other side's evil, the side they are presenting, those are situations that are actually happening. Now, they don't present the best solution in this film for it, and I will fully admit, but there's situations that are happening. So we can't just say that, no, this is just over dramatic. This is all just slanted, because
I'm saying this movie is over dramatic and just slanted, because what is the point of telling this story?
No,
what is someone supposed to gain by going to see John Q and having the film say, yeah, the system is completely unfair and corrupt, so I'm going to watch a movie about this unfair system? What am I supposed to gain from this or learn from it? That the idea is to go and take hostages in a hospital, and I'll probably get off with a miracle heart transplant at the literal 0 hour, and then I'll probably get off from most of these charges, which no one is going to be getting off that lightly if they pull half the things that are in this movie.
No, and again, I'm not saying the script was written great, and I'm not talking about him kidnapping. I'm just saying the financial situations and the things they describe about people and the challenges that they
Right.
run
So
into with their
I get
insurance.
what you're saying, Mark. So I'm saying tell that story.
Mhm.
Tell a real story that has
But
a solution or a moment of heroism or a moment of tragedy to draw people out and get them off their butts rather than just leaving them with this kind of impotent anger and a great Denzel performance.
and maybe that does fall into the fact to where the director was clueless in the other parts of it, not trying to say anything about the healthcare system and just talking about the, hope and miracles angle. Which, if we, what you were saying for sure, them just possibly throwing these other elements in there, not for actually saying something, but I don't know, to be topical or whatnot, or think that they're presenting real world situations. But what it's really about is the faith and hope. I can't tell you because I'm not in the head of the director, but those parts, like you say, those arguments really aren't written well. And what you're supposed to get out of it, I think his core true intention is that you're supposed to just uh, uh, sympathize the faith of what and the love that John Q has, and the extent he's going to go for his son, not so much as a statement of healthcare. I'm not saying it does either very well. I'm just saying maybe that does fall into what the director was saying then, though, and explains a lot of what are you supposed to get out of this. Not any statements about healthcare, about faith and hope, and and I'm not saying it handled it well, but maybe that is what he was trying to go for, and not actually make some kind of statement or solution about healthcare, just using that as a catalyst for John Q without actually trying to have a more earnest discussion about those topics.
I'm going to rewrite the movie again because that's what we love doing here. You've
We
inspired me,
do.
Mark.
We do.
You take the first half hour of the movie and Mikey dies. And Denzel Washington's character, turn this into Aaron Brockovich or Inside Man, where
have them investigate the insurance company and the doctors in the hospital of what actually was going on.
And he takes the healthcare CEO, or have that be the James Woods character, or you have the James Woods and Anne Heche characters, and
Right.
then who's their boss, and then who's their boss, and you have a series. You put them all on trial, and then you expose how the system, this corrupt and possible complicated web, how it runs, or how it's so dysfunctional, and how that affects everyday people. And the big question at the end of it is, why does it take a guy losing his son and going on a quest to expose all this corruption
to try to get change?
Right.
Right.
And maybe the answer is there is no answer because it's too big and it's too corrupt and it's too far gone. But at least you show someone fighting it. You turn into like a Mr. Smith Goes to Washington story.
Yeah. No,
seriously. Maybe it ends in Congress, and he's up there yelling at all the people who have been paid off to look the other way, or in bed with the corporations or something. But make it into a real story, and not just like, oh yeah, he's taking hostages now and he's going to hold a gun to his head. I can't let this open heart surgery thing go because it's the stupidest thing.
Oh no,
it could very well be a smart movie.
It's the stupidest thing. It's like this film just got. It's like as they were writing it, they didn't know where to actually go with it, because, as I mentioned and teased folks, the opening few minutes of this is following some unknown woman in a car who's driving recklessly, and she gets into a wreck, and we have no idea what that's going to be connected to for an hour and 20 minutes at least, until we realize, oh yeah, this is the person that's going to be the heart transplant for. But you don't know that at first. So the way this film even opens is just a bit confusing. You're like, who is it? What does this have to do with anything? Because it's so far from when that becomes relevant. And you look at that scene, you're like, you didn't have to open with that. You really didn't.
But what it did, Mark, is it reminded me of a much better movie, because that scene where the car kind of turns around in the middle of the road and then you see the woman looking up at the window as the Mack truck comes towards her. I was thinking about Pet Cemetery and the death of Gage. I'm like, it was almost like shot for shot for a few seconds.
Well, what's even funnier is when I was watching that scene, I'm like, I understand this is a bit in slow motion, but I'm like, no, that truck driver is hitting his brakes, and they don't even have the truck driver hitting his brakes. He just, I'm like you watch that whole sequence, and you're like, yeah, okay, that's just a little bit of Hollywoodism in that. You're looking at that going, yeah, okay. But it's so confusing to open with that, and then you don't come back to that for almost an hour. I'm not kidding, folks, almost an hour and a half before you actually come back to that.
Well, also, like, because the way she's turned, that grill is coming right at her face, essentially.
Yeah.
How is there still a functioning human heart coming out of that hamburger that was on that scene?
No, she would have got the way that car gets smashed too. I'm like, wait, they're able to get all of her really? I understand, 2002 and safety measures still were in place, but really? But the fact that they didn't need to open with that sequence, which does go on for about 3 to 4 minutes, they didn't need that at all. I'm like, you could have put that in the middle. You could have put that in that accident in the middle, or not even have to have the accident, just the after effects of the accident. Just the helicopter coming down to go get her, and them, you didn't need to see her. I understand maybe they were trying to do that to give a little bit of a human element to the organ donor, but you never actually get to see her face fully or anything. And it's just like, but that's an element, like a number of things in here that just seem to be put in here, missing the point. There's two different movies mixed in here, really. You have either John Q taking on the system, which, is corrupt in some ways. And at least this hospital, they could have proven, even if they don't want to make a blatant statement about the whole system, at least this hospital or the insurance or whatever, like you said, kind of an Aaron Brockovich thing. You take that, or you take it into a different, in the complete hostage situation. But you end up getting this middle of the road film that has a lot of people in it. But just as you watch it, it kind of snowballs downhill and gets weaker as it goes along, unfortunately, to where it ends like a TV drama.
Yeah.
And it starts off strong. I'm not talking about the sequence, but when we meet, I'm talking about when we meet John Q and his family. There's a wonderful setup with John Q and his family. You get to understand the dynamic in this family. The kid, you get to know the kid a little bit and what type of kid he is. I mean, so you can connect with this family and you feel their struggles. That the whole setup is great. And then the rest of the film falls into this Hollywood cliche stuff at the end, to where, you're pretty much watching it for Denzel is what it is, because everybody else, you don't barely remember any of their, what they're really doing. At all. And even Anne Heche's character, it feels like they don't know what she's doing, because you don't spend enough time with her. They have a moment in here, they go, well, why don't we just say that his kid's on the list? He's not going to know, and she pauses like she's thinking, but she has very little dialogue in this film. And I'm just like, we don't understand her. 1 minute she seems cold to where, sorry, this is a business decision. And then she's at home thinking of the kid and ends up doing the thing and getting the kid's name on the list rather than lying about it. And that's great, but we don't understand she's just another plot device in here, really, that could have been played again by anybody.
Right. And also this brings up to the question, because it's what I'll call noble corruption, because if you're talking about a heart transplant list, I'm gonna get this kid's name on the list. Okay, well, who are you bumping off?
Yeah, who are you bumping? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is it another John Q? Someone who's in a similarly desperate situation? They don't really get into that, and that could have been something that could have come up in the trial.
Mhm.
Push
Well,
back on our hero character a little bit. What you're asking for, because there's not an infinite supply of hearts that would
right.
work. There's a cost to this.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of different approaches they could take with it, and in the end, you get a middle of the road film that's considered not horrible, but not really great either. And again, we've mentioned why, like I said, mentioned why I watched it and why I wanted to talk about it was mostly for Mr. Washington, because I've always admired his work. And again, it shows you how one person can kind of carry a film on their shoulders and at least keep it interesting. And his character is interesting, if nothing else, even if the script is not. I mean, it is, but it's a mess, is what it is.
And I will say, I mean, earlier I was kind of joking that he could, pull out the tears on a whim. I believe that he can, but I don't want to imply that just because I think he can do something, he's got several tools as an actor that he can, use whenever he needs to, that he's not also very effective. Because I agree, he's one of our greatest living actors, and he had a great run in the early 2000s. I mean, geez, I was looking when I was watching this, they had like a carousel of other Denzel movies from the
Sure.
time. Like he was in a lot.
He was in a lot. He was man on fire, so to speak. He was the guy for a while. And you can see why when you watch the roles he takes, even if it's, you know, just a basic actioner or whatnot. He puts it all into it. And that's why I've always admired him as an actor and his work and what he does in front of the camera. He's one of those, you can tell he just brings his all regardless of the role. And, and some films are far better for it, like John Q. So,
Yeah, for sure.
So that's where we'll wrap it up here for tonight. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. It's always an interesting discussion with my good friend Ian Simmons here. And now, your final thought with John Q. Would you still suggest it to people if they're fans of, say, Denzel? But what's your kind of final thought with John Q?
I recommend watching it. I didn't like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I like what it could have been. And I think as in our conversations tonight, we have discussed some interesting avenues that it could have taken. I think that's why I would recommend it to people. Like watch it and ask yourself, is this the best version of a drama that someone could make in order to tackle an issue that the filmmakers consider to be very important? And given the fact that this movie didn't set the world on fire,
No.
it didn't like spark people to go out and start, this is my John Q inspired legislation to take down the, corrupt healthcare system. Just ask yourself, could that movie exist and what would it look like? And could that movie have come from what is in John Q? Just to think about it a bit. So yeah, I'd recommend it. I don't think it's a great movie, but it could have been, and that's kind of a tragedy.
And Rotten Tomatoes would agree with you at 26%. So
Oh,
for whatever you take that as, 7.1 on IMDb. Letterbox is a little bit more, just above average, 3.5. But I think they're in the house that I am in that I agree. There are, I would say watch it. If anything, if you like the stars who are in here, but definitely if you're a Denzel Washington fan, you can see, just why I love watching him on screen in just about anything. He's just one of those actors, and you can see how a actor like this just can make the most of even maybe not the best written part, but they can really help keep things interesting enough for you to want to stay to the end of it and see how it plays out and sympathize and at least connect with his character rather than any of the other real, the characters in here. And yeah, so I would say the same thing. You watch it, but don't watch it as an actual statement for the subjects that it's trying to make. Maybe just watch it for his performance and his character of John Q and go, what if? You can ask those questions.
Yeah, and just one thing will say, talking about the supporting cast. I mean, if you want a wow moment, look at Ethan Suplee, who plays the security guard, who at that point was probably well over the 300-pound mark. Today, I mean, he went on an incredible weight loss journey over the last several years, and now he's like trim and buff.
Mhm.
And if you look up pictures of him now, you're like, wow. And the other person is Kevin Connolly, who is the sort of the male nurse attendee guy. He 2 years after this, he was on Entourage playing E. That was sort
Oh,
of
he
like his
was.
big
That's
claim to
right.
fame.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought I recognized him. So yeah, so there you have it, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Ian, always a pleasure. And now this is where I give you your license to shill, sir. So please let the folks know where they can find your stuff at.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. And I'm also right here on YouTube. If you look up Kicking the Seat, I do reviews and interviews and live roundtables. And I'm going to be doing one of those this coming Wednesday night for the Netflix film Jay Kelly, starring George Clooney and Adam Sandler. And we may be also talking about some Netflix related news during that show. Just a couple of minutes, though, because this big Warner Brothers Netflix deal was announced late last week, but it's still not finalized, signed on the dotted line, so anything could happen. So the drama continues. Join us live 8 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday to find out what folks think about that, and of course, Jay Kelly. and I'm here on Sundays talking movies with Mark.
And you're here with Sundays. Yes, next week will be our final Over the Hill episode, and we will determine what will be our January Animation Nation month. So that'll be exciting. So you want to tune in for that as we talk about Dog Day Afternoon, which turned 50 this year, much like myself. So that should be a fun conversation. Special Mark Productions for all your Movie Man needs. And right here on the YouTubes, look for my streams of my gaming, which I've been doing more regularly. And I've got 5 reviews at least coming up later this week that you'll want to check out. So thank you so much, one and all. We appreciate your views. Thank you for a great year. We did the wrap for our podcast, and we've increased by leaps and bounds. A number of countries we're in, Australia, France, England, we're pretty popular there. So thank you for those folks across the oceans listening to us. We appreciate the support in our little sliver of the internet. So until next week, we'll just say